Anyway, today I will share my screen because I will start with a small presentation. We will talk about Agile HR today and HR's new role in the future of work, which is very interesting because it looks completely different than before. I will start to talk about Agile HR and why it's so important for HR to change. And I will also move into some I would say, of the processes, because I saw on the expectations for this session that you had a very, very, very long list, and it more or less covered a 4-day training that I'm running for HR. So there is a bit of a limitation to what we can do in these 2 hours, but you are extremely welcome, of course, to contact me afterwards with questions or comments or suggestions, or join in one of my classes, online classes, or, you know, anything. I will give you some more information about that. Okay, we all know the impact of big trends that we have seen during many years now. The digitalization is affecting us, and now with Corona, people are moving like never before towards a more digital environment and work reality. And I think it was the best thing that could happen to digitalization that this pandemic hit us, because we have accomplished in 6 months what would have taken maybe 10 years if we didn't have the pandemic. The globalization is continuing in spite of the lack of flights and the physical movement. We are being more globalized all the time. It's affecting our way of working. We are mixing different cultures. We are moving around the world. There is the shift to knowledge work from industrial work, and the participation economy is hitting us hard. It's better to share stuff than everybody owns everything. We are sharing, you know, all sorts of things nowadays. We're sharing cars and apartments and, you know, Airbnb, and we're trying to make use of the limited resources that we have in this world and live a more sustainable life. And paradoxically enough, the climate has now changed for the better since the pandemic as well. So these changes that we have seen have increased during the last 6 months, you could say. And there is no sign of anything would stop to change, or constant change is our new reality probably. And there will be more pandemics and more things happening in the world that would further increase the need for business agility, because it's business agility that we are talking about, this capability that we need to build into our organizations to shift quickly. And all leaders, all HR people, and all teams and employees need to understand how to work in new and different ways for the future to accommodate the need for business agility. Artificial intelligence and robotics will actually ultimately create more work, not less, much like today. And there won't be a shortage of jobs in the future, but there will be a shortage of the right skills. So it's a complete skill transformation that we see going on, from people doing the work to people being replaced by robots where it's possible. But this ability to be human, the ability to be a person and to have this human mindset and these qualities that we cannot have in robots and artificial intelligence, will in the future become extremely valuable. The people skills. Skills about psychology, about social systems, about how do we think, how do we act, and intuition, this kind of skills will be extremely valuable when the robots take over. Another change that we see is about how we work. The employee form of work will actually not be maybe the biggest way of working, but it will be to run maybe your own business, maybe partner up with other people and start something for some time, then move on to something else. So the majority of the workforce will freelance by 2027, and remote work becomes the norm. And this slide was not made yesterday, it was made a year ago when we didn't know. Thank you. You muted me, but now I'm back. Okay, so remote work is the norm in the future, and it's already the norm. We have seen the last 6 months. And this is to have the geographic freedom really to work wherever you are, whenever we want, and however we want. So that's some agility already in that. The organization, as you know, is not a machine where we can optimize all the people to become cogs in a perfect machinery, but it's instead a social system, and individuals and interactions over processes and tools obviously is the most important value in the Agile Manifesto. And it's always been the most important value, if you ask me, obviously. And the social system consists of people with dreams and challenges and feelings and thoughts and all these things that machines don't have. And we cannot run organizations like machines anymore. We need to understand people on a deep level to be able to optimize and it's not about being soft here. It's about thinking about return on investment. We are investing in people. We are hiring people. We are trying to make them produce as much as possible, being happy, performing, doing good stuff within our organizations. And then we need to have motivation as well. It's not about some soft, stuff, but it's really about being productive and doing the best we can do and being the best we can be in this world, in this life, inside and outside our organizations. And it's to create those prerequisites for people, make it possible for them to be the best they can be. Nobody wants a manager, everybody wants a coach. Douglas McGregor, what are your assumptions about the most effective way to manage people? We don't talk about managing people anymore. We talk instead about developing people. And he wrote this book, The Human Side of Enterprise, one of my favorite books in the end of the 1950s, beginning of the 1960s, where he talks about human view. How do we view other people? Human view X and human view Y. And I think many of you have read this book, and many of you have heard about human theory X and Y as well, where human theory X states that people are lazy, they don't want to make an effort, they are unmotivated by nature, and they don't want to take responsibility unless you try to motivate them with carrots and sticks. And the Y view, on the other hand, is that you believe that other people want to be the best they can be. They want to contribute to create value for other people, and they will do so if they get the right conditions in the system where we live and work. So you can choose what human view do you have, and people will act accordingly. And this is really important because how we view people affects how we structure our management processes. How do you view people in your organization? And you will see what HR is trying to do with policies, structures, rules, trying to control, managers trying to control, micromanage, etc. And now I've seen examples where managers say from one day to the other, okay, now you have the responsibility. You know, from being micromanaging, they say, okay, we're going to try this agile thing. Now I give you the responsibility. And the next week they say, hey, it doesn't work. Agile doesn't work, because they didn't take responsibility. And that's obviously not the way to do it. You can't just let go. People are not used to taking that ownership and responsibility. This is a coaching procedure. This is something that people need to learn, to take self-leadership, take ownership, and be responsible for what they work with. Some have an easier time doing it. Some will never be able to do it. We're just different as people. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm the founder of Agile People, which is this global network or community with a vision. And our vision is to create the best possible workplaces for the future of work with happy, productive employees, all contributing to a successful organization. I call myself often a hybrid between HR, finance, leadership, and IT, because I have an economic, a bachelor's degree in finance from Gothenburg University. And then I have an IT management master degree from the IT University in Gothenburg. But I've worked most of my life, actually still, as a project manager for IT projects, configuring and implementing talent management systems and processes in large international Swedish organizations across the world. You know, these huge processes, talent management systems, one size fits all. Everybody needs to do it the same way. Group HR decide how everybody else should work with performance management, talent acquisition, competence development, learning and development, compensation and benefits in the whole world. You know, pushing down processes and systems down to everybody in the organization. And nobody was actually happy when we did that, because we were the only ones, the consultants, we were the only ones who were happy because we were making a lot of money. But I jumped that train because I didn't feel good about it. I knew we are not creating value here. We are just making people miserable doing this. So I turned and started to work with Agile. I'm an Agile master since 2009. Nowadays, I call myself an inspiration director and an Agile coach, an Agile people coach. And I'm passionate about combining people and Agile to create those engaged and motivated employees. I'm originally from this small city on the west coast of Sweden, Gothenburg, but I've been traveling extensively the last years since my first book came out in 2017. So I consider myself more a citizen of the world right now. My proverb is that nothing is impossible until you stop trying. So I never give up. I'm extremely stubborn. This is my first book. Came in 2017, a radical approach for HR and managers that leads to motivated employees. I wrote it because I needed some course literature for my Agile HR course. There were no books on this topic that I could use, or at least I couldn't find any. So I said, okay, I'm going to write down all my experiences, and I'm going to kind of formulate my thoughts around how could HR and leadership change. So Agile People means it's not just about HR, because HR can only do that much without the leaders. So leaders need to be on board as well. It's HR and leaders, and that's Agile People. Okay, the second book, the Agile People picture book. I went to South Africa. I ran a training in Cape Town. And during that training, there was this woman in my class. After the training, she came to me and she said, hey, you know, my husband is an illustrator, and he read your book, and then he drew 220 images that goes with messages from your book. Are you kidding me? I said, it's amazing. And I said, okay, let's make this picture book out of all these pictures that he drew. So it's a beautiful, very good book to give to your management teams or your boards of your companies, because it's a lot of pictures and very little text. And as you know, these leaders, the C-suite, they have a very short attention span. So it's perfect. I know HR managers who bought this for their whole management teams and boards, 20 copies to all of them, so everybody could read. The third book came this week. It's a co-creation project among 35 Agile people from around the world, mostly the facilitators who are currently running my online trainings and in-person trainings. So we have collected during the years a lot of Agile people principles, as we call them, inspired by different things. So we have 35 Agile people principles, and all these 35 people have written about each one principle. And this is the result of that effort, the Agile people principles, your call to action for the future of work. It's a big book. It weighs around 1 kilo, and we had a delivery home to Gothenburg last night of 2,000 books. So 2 tons of books were delivered to my home yesterday. Finally, because we've been working extensively now during the pandemic. I will give you a discount on the conference, the book launch, and the ebook. This is on September 9 and 10. I'm sorry, I didn't write that. It's 48 hours, more than 100 sessions. If you go to agilepeople.com/book launch, you can register and you use this discount code and you get 10% discount on the ebook and the conference. It's about, the normal price is 49 euros, and you will then get 10% on that. PMAT 2020 is the code. Here are the Agile People principles. Here you can see 36 because we have optimized for the whole and don't sub-optimize on 2 different ones. In the book, we merged these 2 because it's actually the same thing, optimize for the whole and avoid sub-optimization. And where did we get this from? Well, we started from the Agile Manifesto, but we say this is not enough. We need more. Then we went to Modern Agile and looked at that, because here we added psychological safety and grow people and experimenting, etc. And then we went, we actually made our own manifesto as well, the Agile People Manifesto that you find on agilepeoplemanifesto.org. And here we added some more after creating that in the summer of 2019 together. I wanted to say something about leadership, because I will go extensively into HR after this, but I wanted just to mention the leadership metaphor, which is the gardener metaphor, because I see Agile leadership as the work of a gardener. It's about the whole system. This is the garden, and the system has a purpose. It could be to be as beautiful as possible, or, you know, to grow fruits or vegetables or something else. Regardless, the garden has a purpose, a higher purpose. It should serve something, it should produce some value to some group of people. And in this garden, we have different plants and trees and bushes and vegetables, maybe apples, I don't know, flowers. And they have all different needs. Not one plant has the same need. Some like more sunshine, some like to grow in the shadow, some need a lot of water or less water, some need some special soil or fertilizer, Some like to grow very tight together with other plants, and some need a lot of space around them to grow by themselves. That's not the point. The point is that the gardener need to have the skills, the knowledge about the needs of the plants. Because the only thing the gardener can do is to work on the environment, to produce the perfect conditions for every plant to grow. And it takes skills and competence to be able to do that. It's useless to scream to the plant, grow quicker, faster, better, now. It's useless. The plant won't care. It will grow more or less good, just depending on how you treat the environment and how you work on the soil and what you do around it. So this is my point. You can put a seed into the soil, and if it doesn't grow, there could be different reasons, right? It could be that it's the wrong soil, or it's the wrong country, or wine doesn't grow in Sweden really well because it only grows in New Zealand and South Africa and California, where the conditions are different. So then it doesn't matter how much we try. We need to help that little wine plant somewhere else, right? Or there might be something wrong within the seed. Maybe it's going through a divorce. Maybe it has problems with our manager. Maybe, we don't know. Maybe the seed is sick. And then we need to help the seed to get well. But there is only so much we as an organization can do to help the seed to get well. And every organization have their limits and their kind of way of working with people who are not performing, right? And growing and developing and thriving, being happy in the environment. So I think it's a really good metaphor for leadership. And I will leave it to that, the leadership part. And now I will move into Agile HR and HR's new role in the future of work. So a big summary. This slide's been with me since 2011 when I started to do my Agile HR courses. So it's showing the move from traditional HR processes to more agile HR processes. From episodic, reactive, one-size-fits-all, standardized, push processes to more ongoing, proactive, no-size-fits-all, on a needs basis, a pull approach. People will let HR know what they need. And then we have the organization, moves from the machine metaphor to a network metaphor, from individual to team. Focus on individuals to focus on teams. The leadership metaphor from management to employeeship, and the human view from negative UX to positive UI. The motivation needs to move from extrinsic with carrots and stick to intrinsic from basic needs, based on want instead of based on need. And the feedback from seldom to often. We need to create feedback cultures and probably focus more on positive feedback. I don't see why we need to give constructive or negative feedback. Actually, I don't see why. We need to enforce and strengthen the positive feedback, then we will get more of what we focus on. Nobody is happy to get negative feedback, and probably people know themselves already if they are not performing. And if not, we need to ask questions to help them see or help them realize that this behavior that I'm doing is not very successful. HR's role here changes from controlling and implementing systems, standards, processes, policies, and rules to supporting and coaching organizational agility. This is the role of HR in the future of work. So from focusing on control and alignment to focus on speed, customers. The customers for HR, by the way, who are they? They are managers and employees. All managers and all employees in the organization are the customers of HR. That's the direct customer base. The indirect customer for HR are the external customers, just like with most IT people. We have internal customer and external customers. We are focusing more on adaptability, innovation, and speed, and implementing strategies that foster expertise, collaboration, and decision making. This is also a picture from inspired by Josh Bersin from 2019. We used to start in these talent management projects that I talked about before. We always started from an HR strategy, company-wide HR strategy. Hopefully it was linked to the business strategy. That was not always the case, but sometimes it actually was. And we designed this top-down solution in a center of excellence or expertise in group HR. And then we pushed it out to the business units and the regions. And we pushed change in a kind of an IT platform. And then HR started to measure compliance to the processes that we as consultants had implemented together. And then this program was revised once in a while, every few years maybe, and that was it. And that was a case of top-down dictation, you could say, central power, and everybody needed to comply with those HR processes, performance management processes, and recruitment processes, and compensation programs. Instead, of course, HR need to identify the problem at the source where things happen and where people have the needs. And then they work in cross-functional teams. We prototype solutions together with the customer, together with the people and managers. We test and we iterate and work in an agile way with our deliverables, just like an IT team. And then if we need a platform, we can build it into that platform and we iterate fast. So this is the change we need to make. Why do HR need to lead the transformation? This is a question I get a lot because I think that HR has been sitting in the backseat for way too long, and it's time that they step up and show what they can do because they are the people. They know, they should at least know people, right? And they should be there for the people. But the reason why they need to lead the transformation is because if they hold on to these old structures, you know, deep performance processes, they are responsible for change management, they are responsible for organizational development, they are responsible for leadership programs and how we develop leaders. They're responsible for talent acquisition, workforce planning, comp and ben, and all these deep processes that permeate the whole organizations. And if they don't stop doing that, nobody can change. Nobody in the whole organization. So they need to start to stop, to hinder people from giving their best to the organization. Because that's what they are doing today by sticking to the old policies and rules and their view of people. That's why HR need to go first and show the way. They need to start with themselves, and then they need to start working together with the business to form the solutions that are based on the needs of the business.
Pia-Maria,
so
we have a question in the chat.
Okay, great, perfect.
It says it's from Jason, and he says, I'm curious and like what was mentioned about positive feedback, but could you perhaps give an example of using questions to introduce the possibility of change in place of negative feedback? Yeah,
so if you're a good coach, you know how to formulate questions to make people think, right? So it's often more successful to ask a question. The way you're doing this, is this successful? Do you see that this is a successful thing to say or do? And how could you do different? Or would doing it different create a better result for you? Example of a coaching question. Then people start to think, does it really produce, when I say this, am I reaching my goal? Am I getting what I want? Am I fulfilling my need or whatever? So simple example, but I'm sure you know a lot better questions, coaching questions, because I'm not a trained coach. Do you have another question?
There is one from Klaus, just came in. Won't HR be unemployed in a truly agile organization like Warthog, for example? They only have coaches.
No, I don't think they will be unemployed. I think they will be retrained to agile people coaches. If you think about it, the agile coach role and the HR business partner have exactly the same goals. These two roles are so close to each other, but people don't think about it. I actually work with a big truck manufacturing company in Stockholm, Scania. And there, the agile coaches, the improvement office, they call themselves, and HR, they were sitting in the same corridor, but they never spoke to each other. So I say, don't you see that the business partners here, the HR people that you are sitting so close to, have exactly the same goal as you, improving the organization, developing people, coaching people to be the best they can be. So I put them in the same training, side by side, and they worked in groups together. And then they formed a strategy together of how to improve Scania. And now they go to lunch together and they talk every day with each other and cooperate. So I think instead of saying that HR is not needed, because obviously they are needed, they have a lot of competence around psychology, around social systems, around leadership, around development of people, etc. And this is really valuable competence and really valuable skills for the future of work. It's the way they do it that needs to change. So maybe the title, maybe HR will not be called HR anymore. Maybe it will be called People and Culture, or Agile People Coaching, or Delivering Employee Experience, or something else. But only if we also change the processes under the hood, because I've seen too often that people change the names on their titles, on their HR titles, but they don't change how they work. And that's fake agile HR. That's my thought around it, at least.
Yeah, we do have a few more questions. Would you like to take them now or during the Q&A session?
Yeah, let's do it. Because
so this is, first of all, Peter asks, how does an agile HR organization support an agile project in the organization?
That's a question that I'm unable to answer, because it depends on the needs of the project and what kind of project it is, what kind of industry you're in, what kind of organization, and what is HR's role in that organization. So it's impossible to answer.
Super. A follow-up question from Klaus. Will you still have talent programs? And if yes, how will they look like?
I wouldn't call them talent programs anymore, because we are moving away from seeing, putting people in boxes, like putting them in high performers, low performers, average performers. The 9-box grid is disappearing, and it's already disappeared in most organizations. So it's not talent in the same sense. I prefer to lose that word entirely, actually. Talent management and talent reviews, etc. It's people management, it's people review, it's people development. And it concerns all the people in the organization, not just some high performer, 10%. Why should we only develop and focus on 10% of the workforce? It's stupid, ridiculous.
Interesting, thanks. Michael Arnoldus is asking about, won't there be too many agile coaches? Because some would say that middle management and project managers, etc., will be agile coaches, and now also HR. So will there be too many agile coaches? A very good question.
I mean, every organization needs to think about how maybe we replace management and HR and project managers with an agile people coach. and the Agile People Coach is different from an Agile coach because they can come, usually, if you look at an Agile coach, they come from IT or software development. They are probably an IT project manager, or they have been a Scrum Master, or they have worked somewhere in IT. Usually, I would say there are, of course, exceptions, but usually that's the case. An Agile People Coach can come from an HR role or a leadership role. They can also at the same time have formal power to some degree in the organization, which is something that Agile coaches rarely have. And an Agile People Coach has deeper people skills than an Agile coach, probably. Deeper skills in psychology, in social interaction between people, in relationship management, in bridging differences and working across functions, organizational knowledge, maybe know something about strategy, about the market, maybe something about the domain that they are working in. They probably are deep into complexity theory. They know how to navigate in the organization, etc. So it's a bit different skill set for an Agile People Coach and an Agile coach.
Okay, I was just about to say, please go on. Then Corin Stark asks, oh, how about drop the word Agile in front of coach?
Yeah. People coach, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Agile is an important distinction between, for example, an ICF coach. When you say ICF coach, you immediately get this picture of a coach coaching one-on-one, right? An Agile coach can also coach team or the whole organization. I think this is an important distinction. And you should also be aware of complexity and complexity theory and lean practices and Agile practices, because these are valuable tools that you can work with. So I think it's still valuable to use the word Agile coach or Agile People Coach.
Phew. Thanks very much. And Peter has one more question. I think this would be the last one for now. Will an Agile HR be able to work in a top-down tayloristic organization, and how to change the culture from HR?
HR has a lot to, can affect the culture to a very large degree, is my opinion, because it's by removing the limiting structures that you create a great culture. We usually say culture eats everything for breakfast, right? So it's really important that we nudge behaviors and habits of the people in a certain direction, in a more agile direction. Culture is all about how do people behave, what do people say to each other in the organization, how do they behave with each other in the relationships. It's like an organization's shadow. It's there, but you can't touch it. So when we remove the limiting structures from mainly finance and HR, because it's finance and HR who has the most limiting structures that we need to remove, then we give space and place for people to behave in new and different ways that would enhance and strengthen an agile culture, which is then permitted by the Agile People principles and values that we talk about. High level of psychological safety, trust, visualization, collective intelligence, etc., etc., etc. All those 35 principles that we talk about that we need to increase all the time to create better organizations together.
Okay, no more.
I don't know if I answered the question though. Did I?
Let's see. Peter can
Let's see if there's another one.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to
okay,
slides.
Good. So we can divide Agile HR in two different parts. The first thing is, how do the Agile team work together? Here they can, just as an IT team, work with retrospectives and daily stand-ups and Scrum and Kanban boards, visualize their work, etc., etc. Involve customers in the value delivery. So that's not different. And they need to start experimenting with that. So IT and HR should really join forces here, because I think Agile AT has a lot to learn, to teach HR, and HR has a lot to teach also IT. But usually these two functions don't talk very well with each other for some reason. I spent years trying to bridge the differences between IT and HR when I work with the processes from HR that was going to be implemented in the IT systems, and trying to make them talk together in the same workshops, but it was always very difficult for some reason. The second way of working with Agile HR is the HR deliverables, and that's what HR should deliver together with the business. So that's the what. So these are two different perspectives, you could say, on Agile HR. And as I said, HR can work with retrospectives for continuous learning, customer focus, focusing mainly on producing value for managers and coworkers. Quick feedback loops, you know, you do something small, you deliver it to the business, you get feedback on that. Was this what you needed? If not, give us some feedback. What can we do different? What can we do better, etc. So is this way of working with all the time getting feedback from the customers, like at a demo or a sprint demo, it's the same thing. And they can work cross-functionally with specialists and generalists, striving to create T-shaped HR people. Scrum for HR projects, it works perfectly. I have implemented with several HR teams the Scrum method. Kanbans, visualizing with a Trello board or a board on the wall. Lean for paying salaries, because salary payments is something that should be done exactly the same way each month. So it's about making it more efficient, you know, eliminating waste, using the people close to the process to improve it continuously. And transparent people information across HR functions and to the organization, to show what kind of people information is it that we have. Of course, taking into account the boundaries, which would, in HR's case, the boundaries is called the unions and the laws and the regulations of our work society. I mean, the work law and the work regulations, that forms the boundaries. But many times in organization, HR goes on and do more than they have to. It's not just the external laws and regulations, but they make up things, policies that we need to follow inside the organization, although it's not a legal requirement. A Kanban for HR, this is an example from Björn Sandberg, who is one of the Agile facilitators. Here we have a backlog. We have Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4. We have next, work in progress, on hold, done, etc. And as you know, a Kanban board always evolves with the team. The difference here between this Kanban board maybe and some other IT board might be the blue light track, because in HR, emergencies happen that we need to tend to immediately. And then this track needs to go before all the other tracks. So everybody needs to let go of the whatever they are working on and tend to the blue light track, because now we need to, for example, Corona, how do we communicate with our employees? This is a typical urgent situation where we need to take responsibility for communication to and with employees and support the people who are who have a high need for tranquility, for example, or easily burned out. Principles for Agile HR then. Well, instead of developing those, I think this is more or less a summary of what I've already talked about. Instead of developing policies, rules, and standards, we support flexibility, speed, and collaboration. And instead of delivering those programs and processes to customers, we involve the customer in the delivery. Instead of HR specialists or generalists or HR administrators, we try to create T-shaped HR people who can take many different roles. Instead of individual work, teamwork, instead of functional HR or specialist area, we work, for example, with value stream-based HR. We can define different value streams. One is, for example, from potential candidate to onboarded employee. That's a typical HR value stream, let's say. From jobs and positions to playing many different roles, from HR projects to stable, high-performing teams, from promotions and bonus programs to salary formulas and profit sharing, from delivering programs and processes to customers to focus on supporting the organization to perform instead, doing whatever it takes. Instead of one size fits all, no size fits all. We need to tailor for unique needs. Instead of thinking that, yeah, I know HR, I know what I'm doing, which is a sickness that many HR people suffer from. I went to HR universities, and now I know what Dave Ulrich said, you know, this guru in HR. We have to realize that we don't know anything. We need to use experimentation, and we need to try things out and see what happens and learn from that and move on. Instead of human view X to human view Y.
Yeah, well,
what happens to, yes?
Rob is asking, does Agile HR support the gig economy work as it is more dynamic?
Yes, probably. I never thought about it. That's a question I never had. Does Agile HR support the gig economy? Meaning that we are becoming more flexible when it comes to work, where, how, and when we do work, etc. Yes, definitely. Definitely, yes.
And there's a question, if you could please go back to the previous slide. Just want to take a look at the two last sentences. Experimentation and human view. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions?
No, that was it.
Okay. So job descriptions and titles. HR has a tendency to close people into boxes and put labels on them. So you are a high performer and your title is blah, blah. Or you're a low performer and your role is this and that. And then they write very rigid, detailed task descriptions of what's included in this job and what are you responsible for. So instead of working with those rigid job descriptions, we can see the job descriptions or our main role as a box of standing on instead of living in it. We don't close people into job descriptions. Instead, we see it as our basis. And then we start from there and we can do a lot of other things probably. So, and letting people do what they feel they are good at, what they are passionate about, what they are skilled in, is using the whole person, the whole human being. And then we optimize not only for the people, but also for the whole organization. And we talk more about expectations on people. What do we expect from you in this role? We expect you to be a team worker. We expect you to contribute to a good working climate. We talk a lot more about how we expect you to behave than what exactly are the tasks that you will be performing in our organization. So it's another way of writing these job descriptions when we write them in agile ways. T-shaped competence. I'm great at one thing and I'm familiar with all this other stuff. So we try to build T-shaped people. So we can have one or several deep specialty skills. Nowadays we talk about pie-shaped or M-shaped or even comb-shaped, I've heard as well. And this is also something that we can build our compensation structures on. How deep are you and how wide are you? So each job that you have had in an organization will add on to your salary. And maybe also to a certain degree when you go deeper in something, but maybe there is a limit to how deep we want you to get in a certain skill or in a certain job. Maybe when we have been 3 years in one role, we would stop rewarding moving even deeper into that role, and we would start rewarding instead to become wider. So we can use that to our advantage to create more T-shaped people, the reward system. Okay, I want to change HR, but how do I start them? Well, you can start anywhere, and that's the problem, because then you don't know actually what to start with. I usually say start to visualize your work, or do a Kanban for your management team, a backlog maybe, or start with a retrospective, or do a daily morning meeting or a weekly morning meeting, because many HR people are very lonely. They don't usually work in teams. Start to work together. Introduce new practices bit by bit. Find a common project or task that you can run in an agile way. Do some training around agile principles, experiment with them and learn. And what's even more important is the unlearning that HR needs to understand. It's to remove the old ways of working, which will become superfluous with time. And for everything you do, focus on value for the business. Are we creating value? If we are not creating value, maybe we shouldn't do what we are doing. And involve the business gradually. Ask the business, which is something that HR usually doesn't do.
There's a question, I think it's to the previous slide. Peter asks, how do you prevent that open job description from being exploited? Because sometimes people just have to do routine jobs, and you need trust both ways.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
How do you prevent the open job description from being exploited? Maybe Peter can unmute and you can elaborate.
Yeah. So that one person all the time gets to do that boring work?
No, hi, can I put on the camera? It was just on both ways. Trust goes both ways, I guess, and I guess the job descriptions are also there to focus, of course. Yeah, it's just on in your experience, what works well in that kind of open job descriptions. I would rather rephrase the question like that.
What works well is when people can affect to a large degree what they are doing or not. Always respecting that, of course, there will always be boring work. And I think we should bring up in the team, what do we do with the boring work? I don't think we should put only boring work on a job description and say, this is your job description, if that's what you're referring to. You should have clear role, and you should help each other to achieve what you are trying to achieve. And that means maybe that you share the boring work, or I get to do it one day, you get to do it next day, etc., etc. But we are not using people's skills and competence. We are not developing people if we are just letting them do boring work. So boring work needs to be shared. It's a collective thing, I guess.
Cool, thank you.
And maybe somebody actually doesn't think it's boring work. What a concept. I actually know people who likes to clean at home. It's amazing. And some people love to clean, and I hate it. Wow, let me work together with them. It's the same at work. Some people love to, I don't know, what's a boring thing in IT? Maybe fixing bugs is boring. Maybe somebody really likes that. I have a friend who I went to finance university with her, and she's an accountant. I never became an accountant for obvious reasons. It's not my competence, it's not my desire, but she loves it. When she finds a mistake in the, in the bookkeeping, oh wow, a mistake. Now I need to find what's wrong here. And she goes through everything, and she really, it's like a treasure hunt for her. So we need to find these people who complete ourselves. because it's when we complete ourselves with diverse kinds of people who are not like ourselves, then we get the best solutions. So optimize for diversity. Okay, make everything as simple as possible, but not simpler. So we try all the time to strive towards simplicity. Optimize for the whole. Okay, I have some examples of companies that I've worked with. Maybe we have some questions before, I'm not sure.
No, right now there are no more questions.
It's almost 8 o'clock, so I will try to keep it short, because then I think we can have maybe a longer Q&A if there are any questions. Otherwise, we'll take a break. Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We're back. Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'll just take a few examples, but because I think it will be too long if we look at all of them. So this is a large construction company, and they started to work with some lean practices in their HR service support department. They made some small changes only there that had a huge difference for the people working in HR service support. So they started to do a daily morning meeting where they discussed support cases. They gathered around a digital Trello board where they put their support cases, and they also started to work with root cause analysis. So 3 simple practices that hugely improved the way they work together and how they managed to help employees with their support cases. Agile HR does not have to be big, complex, and company-wide. Sometimes it just takes a few new practices to help a team to work better together. TV4, they have an HR department of around 6 persons, and they came to me because they were all HR specialists, each one person working in one area only. And they wanted to work more together as a team, but they didn't know how to move towards teamwork together. So we identified one project. It was, coincidentally, it was about performance management that they wanted to start to work with in another way. And they created a visual board, a Kanban board, in a common area where they would gather once a week on Fridays from 9 to 12. This had the consequence that they really enjoyed to work more, and they worked a lot more together. They learned also a lot more about each other's specialist areas because they gathered and talked to each other more, and they could cover for each other when somebody was sick because they started to learn each other's areas. So it had a lot of kind of consequences around that. Then they started to identify more projects where they could work together. So this is one way of starting, just doing a weekly stand-up, identifying an area. This is something we could all collaborate around, and then just do it. Just start experimenting with that. ING was a totally different case, big international bank. I went to Amsterdam to help HR to change when actually the rest of the bank had already moved and HR was left behind, far behind, and didn't know how to follow, what to do. I had questions like, oh, the teams, they don't want our 9-box grids anymore. Now what should we deliver to them? You know, things like that. The 3 biggest challenges, according to my customer there, was that there were very strong dependencies with and from other departments. And of course, these dependencies were slowing down the speed of possible change. It was a lot of challenge to learn this agile mindset, especially in the management layer. HR professionals were actually working at the same time with the traditional processes, you know, the old talent management ways of working, and Agile HR for other parts of the organization, which of course was very confusing for them and negatively impacting their capacity. And as always, limitations in leadership mindset and their authentic willingness to grow an agile working environment and culture, because yeah, they normally they do lip service towards the change, but they don't really mean it, right? Another case, Swedish bank, where we implemented OKRs when they realized that they didn't want to go live with the big talent management solution that they had created. They had trained everybody. They had the processes in place, the system in place. They just needed to press go. And then the CEO got cold feet and called me and said, I don't feel good about this. What shall we do instead? I say, let's try OKRs. And we did. In 1 month, we had trained management. We created open workshops where people could come and get help to write OKRs, because it's difficult when you don't know how to do it. And then we started to work with a common Excel sheet on a shared server. That was the system solution that we used for the first iteration. In the second quarter, we had implemented some changes into their huge monolithic talent management system that actually could be configured in a way that would support OKRs, which was fantastic. Opening up, configuring it in another way. Many times it is possible to work in different ways with those platforms, but the consultants who are implementing them, they don't know this. So they, of course, do it the old traditional way. I can skip this one. It's too old to be valid. It's Volvo Cars. But yeah, it's agile performance management. It's to build the goal setting process around a goal rather than around a year, which is the old traditional way of working with performance management. So we did a sprint-like solution here. We said that each goal should be set, and then we do daily check-ins and reprioritization, removing impediments. HR's and managers' role is to lead and guide and coach employees towards goals. And then we have a retrospective, we have feedback, learning, and celebrate, etc. So it was kind of a sprint-like way of working with goals. Casumo, an online casino, had no structure. Usually I need to remove structure, but in this case, we needed to add some structure. So I implemented Scrum and Kanban boards. That's it for the HR team they had grown from 10 to 100 in just a few months. So they needed some structure to their work, and they didn't want to go to the traditional way of working with HR. This is IKEA. I worked a lot with them. Different areas from agile project management to coaching product owners in HR to a lot of different projects. I coached country managers in a program called Fit for Transformation. They have ambitions. The problem is that they are building a hierarchy on top of everything else in group. So yeah, let's see how that turns out. This is the company I talked about before, Scania. Build your Scania HR truck. This is the certification assignment. that they did together, HR and Agile coaches. Beautiful piece of work. Okay, perfect. Then I think we should move into psychological safety. If you don't have any more.
There is one question,
yes,
only one.
Danny.
Have you
Yes.
worked with any Danish companies to reinvent HR?
I actually work with Ender's company, SimCorp. I worked a little bit with SimCorp. I don't know how much effect it had on HR's work though. You tell me. I know it's one of my greatest accomplishments, if I should brag a bit, that I have actually a conference room named after me in SimCorp offices. It's amazing. Wow. I was so flattered. It's amazing. Yeah.
Michael just came with one more question. Goals and performance management. Who set the goals?
People set the goals. People and teams. And management as well. So we link all goals together. In the best of worlds, what we do is that the board or the management team would probably start because the owners have some intentions, some visions, some goals somewhere. So we would set it at the corporate level. And then people would say, okay, so the goals for the next the next 3 months is this. Okay, if we work with OKRs, for example. And then they would set their own goals. What can I do as an employee to contribute to that? And then we might meet in the team. Either you do it actually both top down and bottom up. It's very complex. It's not step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. But you may work with team goals together in the team. You say, okay, our team should deliver this, which contributes to that, which contributes to this. And then we will somehow go in the same direction because it's important that all goals are linked together. But everybody should set their personal goals from intrinsic motivation. What can I do? Think about that. What can I do to contribute? How can I contribute? And then we need to use that to optimize every person's performance and tie it to the team. And if I'm in a team where I don't feel I cannot contribute anything to these team goals, or I'm not at all passionate about our team goals, maybe then you should change team. No? So we need to all the time think about how can we improve? How can we work better together? But goals need to come from intrinsic motivation. That's the most important.
Okay, no more questions.
And this is an initial question, a connection question. Have you ever held back from sharing anything at work? It could have been something you were working on. It could have been an idea you had, or it could have been a complaint or something else, because you were worried about how people might react to it. And you can go to yourself and reflect around this. If that was the case, you probably have a low level of psychological safety in your organization. And this is most often actually the case. People say, yes, I have done this. I have held back from sharing something at work. So I've been thinking a lot about this. What is the most important thing we can create in our organizations to release that capacity and potential that all humans have? And it's psychological safety. And let me talk a little bit about why. Many times we are sitting silently listening, and we don't ask that question that we have, even though it's obvious that somebody has a question. Maybe many people in the audience has the question, but they don't speak up because they're afraid to look stupid. And sometimes we don't tell about our ideas because we are afraid to just be a pain in the ass, even though somebody else is looking for this idea to solve a problem that may happen somewhere else in the organization. Or maybe sometimes we don't share what we know about a certain situation. Like in this case, there is a nurse who has direct contact with a patient, and he or she knows that the patient is not feeling well with the current dose of medication, but she's not saying, or he's not saying that, because last time the doctor said that he or she was incompetent. And this is a waste, right? And it's a risky business if we don't speak up at work. Because nobody wants to look ignorant or incompetent or negative. And it's really easy to manage. We don't ask these questions that we should be asking. We don't admit weaknesses or mistakes. We don't offer new ideas because we think I better keep quiet. They don't like me when I speak up anyway. I'm just a pain, you know? When instead, when you speak up, it's a sign of engagement. People who are silent, people who are quiet, they are not engaged. It's people who make a little bit of a mess, who question things. They are the engaged people. The people who complain, for God's sake, they are engaged because they care. And you should use that engagement and channel it in a good way. So instead, we need to ask that question. And it's about everybody's responsibility to start doing that. Explain that. And then you open up for other people and do the same thing. You know, tell about that idea that you have. Because psychological safety is a belief that when you speak your mind, you are safe. And sometimes in some industries, this could save lives. In this case, it saved the patient's life, that the nurse had the guts, the courage to speak up. And this is the case in many organizations early in the team development phase, that you want to be accepted. You want to know that you can trust the people that you work with. Do they like me? Can I trust them? Do they really accept me the way I am, the whole me? In modern Agile, make safety a prerequisite is one of the cornerstones, and rightfully so, I would say. And in Google, they made research about this as well. What makes a high-performing team? Psychological safety was by far the most important thing to make a high-performing team. So it's not just about feeling good, it's also about productive, profitable organizations. We have some definitions, one long and one short here on this slide. I will send you the slides so you don't have to maybe read it now. You just run through it. Amy Edmondson is actually the person who coined this concept, psychological safety. Some people think it's Google, but it's not, it's Amy. I urge you to watch her TEDx talk on the topic. Yeah, I think really that we can, this is about showing vulnerability as well. Leaders need to show vulnerability and admit mistakes. Showing that you're not perfect as a leader, that creates a lot of psychological safety. Asking a lot of questions, using everybody's brains to solve a problem, admitting that you make mistakes and that you don't have all the answers. As a leader, that's something that you have to do. And then you increase the overall pace of learning in the organization. Okay, we are going to play a game, and this game is called the Psychological Safety Game. So to get there, you go to our website, you go to SciSafeGame, agilepeople.com. And now is the time, Torsten, to put people in groups. I will just a little bit explain. There is a magnifying glass here, so you can see the cards. There are instructions here, open instructions. So you can read how to play. You can decide how to play. And then we also have another way of playing it. It's the random version. And that would be when you, come on, when you press the random button at the bottom of the screen of the SciSafe game. No, just because I said so, it doesn't want to open. But I think you can go on, Torsten, and put people into rooms now. And maybe we should give people.
I'm just thinking maybe we should hear if there are any questions to the game.
It seems like we cannot get into the game.
Sorry about that. You can try it anytime later, actually.
Since this is not working, we need to improvise a little bit. So a suggestion here is that we still give people a chance to meet in breakout rooms and then maybe talk about what it takes for them to feel safe and speak up. Is that okay?
Maybe this one is a good one.
Yes.
What happens if you don't let people fail? What effect does it have on culture, working climate, innovation, and performance? Is this something you could discuss?
Pia-Maria, there are 3 questions in the chat, or maybe 2, and then I have one.
Let me have a look.
And how do you want to? I'll give you.
Games is working now.
Oh.
Then you have to play it with your teams instead.
Exactly.
Please do. Yeah. There are instructions inside, so please go ahead and play it. Maybe not all at the same time then, but you know.
So do you want to take a few questions now?
Yeah, sure.
So Tobias is asking, how do you deal with people that steal all the time? And this goes back to a slide where you were talking about, please ask questions, and so forth. So I hope Tobias is back.
Yes, yes.
Good.
So the question is that, yes, we should allow people to speak up and they have this trust in speaking up, but you also time to time dealing with someone who don't understand there should be room for other people, so they take all the airtime.
Yeah, so maybe you give each person 2 minutes and you make sure everybody speaks as well. So as a coach, as a facilitator, you have a lot of techniques to limit how much people speak. A lot of tools and, you know, practices. It's just to use the tools and practices to give equal space to everybody. Don't leave it free for people to steal all the time. You need to kind of govern that a little bit. If you're a good coach or facilitator, you know how to do this.
Thanks.
Okay. A question for from Klaus. So the cards in the game, they function as a nudge? Question mark.
Dialogue starter, I would say. Making it safe to speak about important and difficult topics that you usually don't speak about. And doing something about the challenges that you have in your team. Making team members come together and get closer to each other, getting to know each other, getting to know what other people like that you do and what they don't like that you do. And that's also the other thing that I wanted to share with you, the washing instructions. This is also a very good exercise that you could do together. So the washing instruction, the purpose of this practice is to understand how I should be treating my colleagues based on their motives to keep them happy, comfortable, and productive. And then what we do is that we look at the do's and the don'ts derived from a person's, now I'm talking about a specific profile here, but it could be any tool that you use, or you don't use any tool. You just let people write down on a flip chart, do this, but don't do this, because all people have washing instructions. All people want to be treated differently. So the worst thing you can do to a person is to treat them exactly like you want to be treated, because probably they want to be treated differently. All people have their own kind of washing instructions, and you understand the metaphor here. So what we do is that we write down, this is what I want other people to do. This is what I don't want them to do, on a flip chart, and put them on the walls. And everybody in the team goes into the room and they read what people's washing instructions are, and they speak to each other, communicate, ask questions. Oh my, I didn't know that you didn't like that. Or I'm going to try to do this more to you. Or wow, this is something I didn't know about you. You find out all sorts of things about people when you do this exercise. And it's not very difficult. It's very easy. This is an example. This is actually my personal washing instructions. Okay, so good team exercise to get to know each other a little bit deeper, which is extremely important to create psychological safety as well.
Pia-Maria and Thorsten, I do have one question. It's about feedback. And one of your slides, you said we should really get feedback. Recently, I learned that I should really learn to ask for feedback. Do you have any comments to that?
Yes, sure. I mean, yes, you can ask for feedback. Why not? If I want to ask for feedback, I probably do that already. Or
the problem is if you are not really open to feedback and I want to give you feedback, then maybe that's not an ideal situation.
Yes, you can always give positive feedback, but you don't have to give constructive or negative feedback. Instead, ask a question, I would say. Mm-hmm. Don't give, because this is from your view. This is what you think, and you are biased. Maybe somebody else doesn't think the same thing as you think. So it might be taken negatively. You know, if somebody comes up to you and asks, can I give you some feedback? How do you feel in your body when somebody says that? Can I give you some feedback?
Maybe sometimes I would feel a little pushed, really.
I would definitely feel like, oop, defensive, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, here it comes. What did I do wrong now? It's the same feeling as when you are driving in your car and you see a police car on the side. Oh, do I have my belt on? Did I do something wrong? Did I drive too fast? You instantly start to think about all the things that you might have done wrong. It's not productive to give each other constructive feedback. It's not. I'm quite sure about that, but yeah, maybe some people disagree, obviously, because now I'm also biased when I say that. So
okay, thanks a lot, Pia-Maria.
I would like to say a big thank you to Pia-Maria for taking the time in your busy schedule to talk to us about Agile HR and also touching on psychological safety. And thank you for Liza for helping both organizing this session and co-hosting the session here.
And can I also say thank you for having me and for letting me share with you this meetup. It was great. Great to see so many people who are interested in Agile HR. I love it.
Great to have you here.
Wish you good luck for the future with your companies and with Agile people.
Thank you.